The obsidian cathedral had not seen a binding rite in 200 years. Maven pressed herself against the cold stone of the bell tower window, her breath fogging the glass. Below her, the cathedral floor was a sea of moving bodies, 3,000 wolves in ceremonial silver, gathered beneath the obsidian dome that had been carved from a single fallen meteor. Torchlight licked the black walls and threw ancient sigils across the faces of the noble houses. She had no right to be here. And yet she had climbed the servants' stairs in the dark until her lungs burned, because she had to see it with her own eyes. The binding rite. The night the new Alpha King would name his Luna before the gods. Korik had not sent for her in 9 days. 9 days of silence after 11 months of stolen nights. 9 days of waiting in the herbalist's loft above the kennels, listening for the sound of his boots that never came. 9 days of holding the secret beneath her ribs and whispering to it that everything would be all right, that he had promised, that he would honor what he had carved into her shoulder with his teeth. "Pup of mine," he had murmured against her throat the night the moon broke red. "I will tear down the council before I let them take you from me." She had believed him. Maven pressed her palm flat to her stomach, where the second secret lay coiled and waiting. 3 months along. Old enough that the village midwife had pursed her lips. Young enough that no one in the citadel had yet guessed. She had come tonight to see his face. Just his face. To look at him one more time before she found the courage to slip a note beneath his chamber door. Words she had written and rewritten until the parchment was soft as cloth. "I carry your child. Choose us. Choose us before it is too late." Below, the high speaker raised his staff of wolfbone, and the cathedral fell into silence. "Korik, son of Valor, blood of the Iron Moon line." The old man's voice rolled through the dome like distant thunder. "Step forward and name the woman who shall sit at your right hand for the years of your reign." Korik moved. From her tiny window, Maven could only see the top of his head. Black hair cropped short for the right, the slope of broad shoulders beneath the silver mantle, the predatory ease that had once made her knees weak in a moonlit orchard. He stopped before the dais. 6 women stood there in robes the color of fresh snow. At the center, with hair like a crow's wing, walked Isolde of House Drakemore, daughter of the only house powerful enough to challenge the Iron Moon throne if it was not appeased. Her father had brought 1,200 warriors to the citadel walls last spring and called it an honor guard while everyone understood it was a threat. Maven's mark burned beneath her dress. "Look up," she begged him silently. "Look up. Find me." Korik turned his head a fraction. For one impossible breath, Maven thought he had heard her. She thought his eyes, those riverstone eyes the color of wet slate, were going to lift to the bell tower. She thought he was going to break the silence and say her name. Instead, he reached out his hand and took Isolde's. The cathedral did not erupt. It exhaled, a vast, satisfied sound that rolled through the gathered packs like a tide coming in. The treaties were sealed. The Drakemore threat was neutralized. Isolde smiled. It was not a smile of love. It was a smile of victory. And Korik. Her Korik, the man who had pressed his forehead to the rise of her belly only 12 nights ago, and whispered that he could already feel the heartbeat. Korik did not look up. He did not look back. He did not look for her at all. The mark on Maven's shoulder split open beneath her dress. She felt the warm wet of it before she felt the pain. Then the pain came, white and total, as though someone had pressed a brand to her skin. She bit down on her own knuckle to keep from screaming. Blood seeped through her sleeve and dripped onto the bell tower floor. A claiming bite did not bleed. Not unless the wolf who had given it was... What was the word her grandmother had used? Recanting. The body's old way of telling a woman that the man who had marked her had set her aside. Maven slid down the wall. She did not weep. She sat on the cold stone with blood soaking her sleeve and listened to the celebration begin 3 floors below. The horns, the howls, the great bronze bell ringing in long, glad strokes that shook the tower around her. He never chose me. The thought arrived complete, like a sentence handed to her by a stranger. She turned it over. She waited for it to be wrong. It was not wrong. He had marked her in the orchard, yes. He had whispered against her skin, yes. He had made her believe she was the secret center of his world, yes. But he had not chosen her. He had used her, the way an alpha uses a thing he can keep hidden. Maven pressed her hands to her belly and felt the small life shift beneath her palms. Oh, she thought. And that was when the tears came. Not for herself, but for the child made by a man who had never been brave enough to claim either of them in daylight. She would not stay. She rose. She steadied her bleeding shoulder against the wall. She went down the stairs in the dark while the cathedral roared with joy below. In her loft, she packed a satchel, 2 dresses, the flint and striker her grandmother had left her, a loaf of black bread, the little knife she used for cutting herbs, the folded note she had written for Korik. She fed it to the brazier without unfolding it, and watched the words she had practiced for 100 nights curl into ash. When she slipped through the postern gate at the western edge of the citadel grounds, the snow was beginning to fall. The bonfires of the celebration glowed orange behind her, throwing her shadow long across the white. She did not look back. She did not see, 3 towers above, the figure who had finally pushed his way out of the throng of nobles and climbed to the highest battlement because the bond on his shoulder had begun to bleed mid-right, and he had not understood why. She did not see him scan the snow with eyes gone wild, searching for the small figure he could feel disappearing from the edge of his world. She did not hear him roar her name into the falling snow until his voice broke open. By the time Korik Ironmoon reached the herbalist's loft, the brazier was cold and the bed was made, and Maven was already gone. 7 months later, the village of Hollowmere had stopped asking the healer woman about her past. She had walked out of the snowstorm 3 months after fleeing the citadel, half frozen, 6 months heavy with child, with a story so thin no one had bothered to test it. A widow, she said. Her husband a woodcutter taken by a winter wolf. Her name, she gave them the first one that came to her tongue. Wren. The villagers were salt fishers and peat cutters who lived where the great northern lake met the foot of the Iron Spurs, 3 weeks' hard travel from any city that knew the name Ironmoon. The head woman, a sharp-eyed grandmother named Halloran, had given her the abandoned netmender's hut at the edge of the reeds, in exchange for the work of her hands. The work of her hands was a great deal. She could set a broken finger so cleanly the bone forgot the break. She knew which moss drew fever from a wound and which mushroom would stop a hemorrhage. By the 2nd month, she had delivered 3 babies and saved a fisherman's foot from the rot. Indispensable women are not asked about their pasts. She had given birth to her son alone, in the hut, on a night when the wind off the lake screamed so loud no one heard her cry out. She had named him Ashriel. He was a month old now, and he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen, and he was the reason she rose every morning when grief tried to keep her in bed. His eyes had not yet decided their color. They shifted between riverstone gray and the soft brown of her own. The mark on her shoulder had not healed. That was the strangeness. By every law of wolf kind, the bite of a wolf who had set his mate aside should have closed within a moon. Instead, hers had scabbed and reopened week after week. Some mornings she woke to find her shift soaked through with a thin, clear fluid that smelled faintly of iron and pine. And, this was the part she could not bring herself to think about. Sometimes, in the deep belly of the night, the mark would warm. Not burn. Warm. As though a hand had been laid over it. She told herself it was grief. She was lying. It was on the morning of the first thaw that everything began to come apart. She had taken her son down to the lake edge to wash linens when Halloran came hurrying along the gravel path with her stick clicking and her face set in the expression that meant, trouble has arrived. Strangers, 2 riders at the headman's house, asking after a healer woman. Maven's hands went numb in the cold water. By what name? None, by description. Young woman, dark hair, came in winter, travels alone. I told them I knew of no such woman. The headman is keeping them in talk. You have perhaps an hour. Were they wolves? They wore long coats and did not unbutton them at the throat. They asked for water and did not drink it. The horses they rode were the size of plowbulls. You tell me, healer. Halloran tilted her head. The southern trader came through last week. He had news from the Iron Moon Citadel. Of the king. He said the new King Korik has not slept under his own roof since his binding rite. He said the Luna Isul has been sent back to her father's hold. He said the king rides the country at the head of 100 wolves, hunting something he will not name, and any village that cannot give him news of it is searched stone by stone before he goes. Her voice was careful. The trader said the king's eyes are no longer the right color. The baby made a small noise against Maven's collarbone. What color are they? Yellow, like a wolf's. All the time, even in his man shape. The mark warmed under her shift. Not the gentle warmth of the nighttime reaching, the sharp, sudden warmth of recognition, the warmth of a hand pressed flat to a door from the other side, knowing the door is there. She turned her face toward the iron line of the southern hills and saw, at the very edge of the gravel path where it climbed away from the lake, a single wolf standing motionless against the pale morning sky. It was not gray. It was not brown. It was black as the inside of a bell tower. And it was looking, with eyes the color of yellow riverstone, directly at her. Maven did not run. Some old, deep, wolf blood instinct told her that running would be the last thing she ever did. The black wolf on the ridge had not so much as flicked an ear, but every line of its body said, I have already caught you. She tightened her grip on her son and forced her feet to walk along the lake edge in the slow, deliberate way of a woman with a child to mind. Halloran fell into step beside her. Do not look at it. It is already looking at me. Before they reached the smokehouse, a sound rose from the southern path that made every dog in Hollowmere begin to scream. Hooves, a great many of them. Around the bend at the foot of the spur road came a column of riders, 15 at least, their long coats whipping in the thaw wind. At their head rode an older wolf on a dappled gray horse, broad-shouldered, gray-bearded, with the kind of stillness that announced, do not test me. The black wolf on the ridge melted into the trees and was gone. The column slowed. The gray-bearded wolf swung down from his saddle and stood beside his horse with his hands open at his sides. The old courtesy that meant I bring no claws to this door. Maven handed her son to Halloran. No, child. If anything happens, raise him with the lake song. Tell him his mother loved him more than any wolf has ever loved anything. She walked across the gravel. The gray-bearded man inclined his head when she was 10 paces away. Up close, he was older than he had looked. His face was lined the way Riverstone is lined, by long water and longer weather. Lady, he said, I am no lady. With respect you are. My name is Hadron Vase. I served as first sword to King Valor Ironmoon for 31 years, and I serve his son now in the same office. I am the man who taught Korik to hold a blade. He paused. I am also the man who failed to teach him sense. Maven felt something crack inside her chest. She kept her face still. What do you want, Hadron Vice? To talk. Inside, if you will allow it. I have ridden 5 weeks to find you. She took him to her hut. He came alone across the threshold and sat at her small table and laid his sword belt on the floor beside him in the gesture that meant I am a guest in this house, and I will not take it up again until I leave. Speak, she said. He looked at his hands. Then he looked up. He did choose her. I will not insult you with a softer telling. On the night of the binding rite, my king stood before the council of the 6 houses and gave his hand to Iseult Drakemore in full possession of his mind. There was no poison. There was no spell. There was no compulsion. I have had every grain of that night turned over by the speakers because when he came to me the next morning with his shoulder bleeding through his shirt and asked me what had happened, I could not bear to tell him the truth. So I looked. I would have given my own hand to find an excuse. There was nothing. He stopped. He breathed. He chose her because he had been told, since he was 9 years old, that a king who cannot make the cold choice will lose his throne. He chose her because the council had pressed him for 2 years, and Drakemoor's 1,200 warriors were camped at his walls. He chose her because he was afraid. Afraid in the way that powerful men are afraid, which is the worst kind, because it wears a crown and calls itself duty. The kettle began to whistle. Maven did not move to take it off. He knew about you. He knew about the child. He knew the bond he had given you was the true bond. And he chose against it because he believed that if he claimed a healer woman from the kennel loft over Isolde Drakemoor, the council would call him weak, and the kingdom would burn. He believed he was saving everyone by destroying you. He was saving himself. Maven said quietly, "Yes. He has known it since the morning he woke in his marriage bed and could not look at the woman beside him because his blood kept screaming the wrong name." The kettle screamed on. She rose, took it from the hook, and poured hot water into a clay cup with hands that had finally begun to shake. "You have not asked what he wants. I do not care what he wants." "That is a lie, lady, but a fair one. He has set aside the Luna Isolde and named no replacement. He has not slept under a roof in 5 moons. He has hunted you across 3 regions and torn open villages I would not have torn open in a war. The bond on his shoulder is killing him slowly, and his eyes have gone wolf yellow and stayed that way. Then he should not have set me aside. No, he should not have. I am here to tell you he is coming whether you wish it or not." She thought of the black wolf on the ridge. "He is already here." Hadrin's face went still. "What did you say?" "On the spur road. Not an hour passed. A black wolf, large as a warhorse. It melted into the trees when your column came." She lifted her gaze to his. "Your king has found me, Hadrin Vase. And he has not come alone, has he?" The old wolf was very pale. "No. He left me at Brindle Crossing 2 days ago. Lady, listen. There is something else you must know before he reaches your door. Something that is the reason I rode so hard to be here first." A board creaked somewhere in the hut. Hadrin's hand was on his sword belt before she understood why. The door had not opened. The shutters had not moved. But the air inside had changed. The way air changes when a predator has entered a room without sound. Hadrin rose to his full height and put his back to Maven and the cradle. "Show yourself. Or I will know the Drakemoors have hired the kind of killer I had hoped never to meet again." A long, slow exhale answered him. A figure unfolded itself from the dark corner by the wood stack, a man shape, slim, dressed in oiled black leather, with a face wrapped in gray cloth and eyes the pale washed-out color of a winter sky. He held a blackened knife in one hand and a small clay vial in the other. "The Drakemoors," the figure said softly, "send their regards to the false mate." And then, with the speed of something that was not entirely a wolf and not entirely a man, he came across the room for Maven's throat. Maven had never killed a man. She was not certain, in the half-second between the lunge and the sound of Ashriel beginning to cry, that she was capable of it. Then the blackened knife came down toward her collarbone, and Hadrin's old scarred forearm came up to meet it, and the blade went through the muscle of the first sword's arm and out the other side. Hadrin did not make a sound. He clamped his free hand around the assassin's wrist and twisted. The black knife clattered onto the table and skidded into Maven's lap. She caught it without thinking. The hilt was warm. The steel was so cold it made her fingers ache. "Take the babe," Hadrin rasped. "Sell her, now." But the assassin had not come alone. The shutters of the western window blew inward in a single splintering crash, and a second figure rolled through the gap. This one came straight for the cradle. Maven moved. She did not know how she crossed the distance. She remembered only the moment her body arrived between the cradle and the blade, with the cold black hilt still gripped in her own hand. She drove it upward. The assassin had been expecting a healer woman. The assassin had not been expecting a mother. The blade went into the soft hollow under the jaw and out through the top of the skull, and the assassin dropped at her feet like a coat slipping from a peg. She did not have time to be horrified. The first assassin had Hadrian on the floor. The old wolf was bleeding from his arm and from a cut across his ribs, and the assassin was reaching for the small clay vial that had rolled under the bench. She understood what was in the vial. Wolfsbane oil. Concentrated. Enough on a blade to kill an alpha-blooded wolf in the time it took to draw breath. She had no knife to throw. She had let it go in the body at her feet without realizing. She raised her empty hands instead, and the warmth that had lived under her shoulder for half a year, the strange unhealed warmth of the bond that should have died and would not, came rushing down her arms like a river finding its bed. A pale silver light bloomed between her palms. It was not the gold of a healer's working. It was colder than that. Older. It was the color of moonlight on standing water, and it carried with it a sound that was not quite a sound. A single, long, low note, as though somewhere very far away a great horn had been blown and only she could hear it. The assassin looked up from the vial. The pale eyes above the gray cloth went wide. "Saurin," he breathed. The word was not in any language she knew, and yet she understood it the way a sleeper understands a word spoken into a dream. Moon called. Moon marked. One the moon has named. He dropped the vial and ran. She did not let him. She raised one shining hand and pulled. The silver light leapt across the room and closed around his ankles and dragged him backward as though he weighed nothing. He came to rest at her feet with the pale eyes fixed on her face, and what she saw there she had not expected. Reverence. "Forgive me, Saurin," he whispered. "I did not know. Who sent you? Speak it." "Lady Iseult Drakemore. She paid the Hollow Order 3 chests of southern silver. We were 6. We were sent to find the false mate and the bastard child. She did not say the false mate was Saurin." The light dimmed in her hands. She knelt and pressed 2 fingers to his forehead. The light pulsed once. He went limp. "Sleep," she said, "until the wolves of Ironmoon come for you." She rose. Her knees nearly gave. She caught the edge of the table. Hadrian was staring at her from the floor. "Lady, what are you?" "I do not know. I have never known." Outside, very close now, a great wolf began to howl. The howl of a pack leader who has scented his quarry through 5 weeks and has finally come to the door behind which the thing he has been tearing the country apart to find is standing. She went to the cradle. She lifted her son, who had stopped crying and was watching the room with eyes that had, she saw it now, eyes that had decided their color. Yellow. Wolf yellow. "Oh, my brave one," she whispered. "What have we kept secret from each other, you and I?" The door was struck once, hard. Not a knock, the deliberate blow of a man who has decided the door is a courtesy. "Maven." The voice on the other side was wrecked. "Maven, open the door." She closed her eyes. She held her son. She did not move. "Open the door before I take it down. Please. I can hear the babe. Open the door, Moonheart. I am begging you." He had not called her Moonheart since the night of the red moon. She opened the door. The man on her threshold was not the Alpha King who had stood in the obsidian cathedral. That man had been a creature of careful edges, the cropped hair, the silver mantle, the still face trained from childhood to give nothing away. This man had hair to his shoulders, knotted and unwashed. He was thinner than she had ever seen him. His eyes were full wolf yellow in his man shape, the pupils blown so wide they were almost circles. He looked like a man who had been screaming for a long time in a place where no one could hear him. He saw her. He saw the baby in her arms. His knees went out from under him and he came down onto the boards of her threshold so hard the whole hut shook. "Maven," he said, and the word broke in the middle. She stood in her doorway and looked down at the most powerful wolf in the northern reaches kneeling at her feet, and she felt too many things, all at once, until they had cancelled each other out the way a great many voices speaking together become silence. Get up. He did not move. Korik Iron Moon, get up off your knees. There are 4 assassins still in these hills and a man bleeding on my floor, and I will not have this conversation with you groveling in my doorway like a dog who has been beaten. Get up. He got up. He moved like a man who had forgotten how to use his own body. He kept his gaze on her face the whole time, as though looking away might make her vanish. Hadron Weiss came up beside her, his cut arm bound. My king, she has earned a great many words from you. I would suggest you spend them carefully. Korik did not look at Hadron. He looked at the baby. She had braced herself for what she thought she would see. Pride, possessiveness, the wolfish hunger of a king who has just laid eyes on his heir. She had not braced herself for what she actually saw. Shame. Pure, bone deep, no place to hide shame. The kind that does not perform itself for a watcher, because it has no watcher in mind. What is his name? Ashriel. Ashriel. He repeated it softly. May I see his face? You are seeing it. May I see it closer? She thought about saying no. The word was on her tongue. She said instead, because she would not let her son grow up thinking his mother had been a small woman. You may look. You will not touch him. Not today. He came one careful step forward and bent until his face was level with the baby's. Ashriel looked up at him with the wolf-yellow eyes and did not cry. He reached out one tiny pale hand, very slowly, and pressed his palm against Korik's stubbled cheek. A sound came out of Korik that she would carry until she died. It was not a sob. It was the sound a tree makes when it finally falls in a forest after standing dead a long time. He stepped back. He pressed the heel of his hand against his mouth and stood like that for several breaths. And she watched the line of his shoulders and felt, at last, against her will, something move in her chest that was not nothing. She hated him for it. Inside, quietly. He came inside. He waited while she packed Hadron's arm with witch hazel and yarrow, while she fed her son in the curtained corner, while she settled the baby in the cradle. When she was ready, she sat at the table. Sit, Korik. He sat. The bench was too small for him. He waited the way a defendant waits. Hadron told me you chose her with your full mind? Yes. You knew about the bond, about me, about the child. You chose her because you were afraid. Yes. Look at me when you say it. He looked at her. The yellow gaze was terrible. I chose her because I was afraid. There was no poison, no spell, no compulsion. I knew you were carrying my pup. I knew the bond was the true one. I felt you in the bell tower the moment I stepped onto the dais. Your terror, the rise of your breath, I felt it through my mark. And I made the cold choice anyway, because I had been told for 15 years that a king who cannot make the cold choice is no king. The next morning, I woke in a marriage bed with the wrong woman beside me, and I understood that I had bartered the only true thing in my life for a crown that was already mine. Then why are you here? What changed? Everything. I cannot live as the man who made that choice. The bond did not let me. I tried for 1 moon. I could not eat. I could not sleep. I could not look at Isolde. He undid the throat of his coat, and she saw the open weeping wound where her bite had refused to heal. The mark on my shoulder began to bleed at the right and has not stopped. I am dying. Maven. The speakers say I have perhaps 2 moons left if I do not complete the bond. The yellow in my eyes is the wolf eating the man. By the year's end, there will not be a Korik Iron Moon left to find. There will be a wolf in a king's coat, and the kingdom will burn before the next winter. His hands were shaking on the table. I am not asking for the bond. I am not asking for the throne. I am not asking, God help me, even to hold our son. I am asking for one thing. Do not send me away tonight. Let me sleep in the cold by your door. Give me until morning to be a man within 20 paces of the woman I should have claimed in front of the world. And then, if in the morning you tell me to ride out, I will ride out, and I will not come back. She thought of the bell tower. She thought of the brazier eating the note. She thought of her son's small palm against his stubbled cheek. No, you will not sleep by my door. You will go back to the inn at the headman's house with your wolves, and you will be fed and tended like the king you are. And tomorrow at first light you will return here, alone, and we will speak again. Tonight my son will not sleep in a hut where his father is camped on the threshold like a beggar. Go. He rose. He bowed to her. Fully. The deep bow of a wolf to one who outranks him. He stopped at the threshold, his back to her. There is a man riding north to find you. He is not mine. He will reach this village within 3 days. Ioran Sevralt, the high alpha of the Westmark. He has been hearing the same songs that have brought my speakers to their knees. Songs about a Sauron-marked woman who has surfaced in a fisher village under a false name. He is coming because the Westmark believes you are theirs by older right than mine. He turned his head, just enough to show her the side of his face. And he is, by every account I have, a far better man than I have ever been. He walked out into the snow. Ioran Sevralt arrived in Hollowmere on the 3rd morning. He arrived alone, on a single grey horse, with his sword sheathed and his coat unbuttoned at the throat in the old courtesy. He stopped at the edge of the village and dismounted before he was within bowshot of any roof. He stood in the gravel road in the pale spring sun and waited to be invited the rest of the way in. Halloran came up the path and looked at him. He was tall, not as tall as Corric, but built broader through the chest, with the deep stillness of a wolf who had not had to prove anything to anyone in a long time. His hair was wheat pale and pulled back with a strip of dark leather. His eyes were the color of a winter sea. "Mother," he said to Halloran, who was easily 40 years his senior. "I am Ioran Sevralt of the 3 Rivers. I am told you keep a healer in this village. I am not here to take her. I am here to speak with her, if she will allow it. I will go where you put me until she sends word." Halloran studied him for a slow breath. "You will go to the smokehouse. You will sit in it. You will give me your sword." He gave her his sword without looking at it. "That one," Halloran later told Maven, "is the kind of wolf the old songs are written about." Corric had, in the 3 days since, kept every word he had given her. He returned at first light each morning and sat at her table for 1 hour and went back before noon. He had not asked to hold the baby. He had told her, in pieces, the story of the moons since the cathedral. He was not the man she had thought he was when she opened the door. He was, perhaps, the man she had once thought he might one day become, in a moonlit orchard. She did not know what to do with that. Ioran sat in the smokehouse for 6 hours. When she finally walked down the gravel path and pushed open the smokehouse door, she found him sitting on an overturned crate, peeling an apple with a small bone-handled knife. The peel had come off in a single unbroken curl. He set the apple down. He stood. He bowed. Not the deep bow Corric had given her, but a slower one, with one open hand laid over the heart. The Westmark old bow. The bow a wolf gave to a moon-marked woman in the songs. "Lady Saren. My name is Maven. Forgive me, Lady Maven. Stand up, Ioran Sevralt." He stood. His gaze found her face. He did not look at the baby. That was deliberate. He was waiting for her to offer. "Sit, please." He sat. She sat across from him on a low bench that smelled of old cedar. "You have ridden a long way. 11 days. For a song. For a woman in a song. May I tell you what the song says? Then you may tell me whether to ride home in the morning, and I will." "Tell me." "There was once a wolf mother in the Westmark named Syorla. She was a healer woman from a fishing village. She caught the eye of a king, and he made her his secret. And when his council pressed him for a marriage of state, he set her aside and chose another. She fled with his unborn child. She was hunted by the chosen wife's family. She was found, eventually, by an alpha of a smaller pack. Not a king, only a pack lord. He did not court her. He gave her his pack as a wall between her and her hunters. He gave her his own roof and slept on the porch of it for one winter, and asked nothing of her. And at the end of that winter she walked out, and asked him whether he had any room left in his heart for a woman who had once loved a king. And he said, his mouth lifted at one corner, "Lady, I have nothing in my heart but that room. The rest of the house has been waiting for you to walk into it." She was very still. What happened to the king? He came at the end of the winter. He had torn his country apart. He came to the Packlord's hall and demanded her back. And the Packlord did not fight him. The Packlord said, "She will choose. She has been chosen against once, and that was once too many." And what did she choose? The song does not say. Every daughter who hears it has to choose for herself what choosing means. He paused. I am not Corric Ironmoon. There are very old laws in the Westmark about women the moon has named, and one of them is that a Sawerin may not be hunted on Westmark soil. There are 40 of my warriors at the border. If you come to my country, no Drakemore blade will reach you. Whether you ever give me a single warm word in return is not part of the offer. She thought of the assassin in her hut. She thought of Corric's bleeding shoulder. She thought of her son's palm against his father's cheek. Eorin Severalt. I have a son. He is the heir of the Ironmoon line, by blood, whether his father claims him or not. If I came to the Westmark, you would be putting your 40 warriors and your hall and your name between my son and an army. Yes, I would. Why? He did not answer quickly. That was the third thing she liked about him. Because I have been an alpha for 11 years, and I have a hall full of pups and widows and old men, and I have never been given the chance to do a thing the songs would still be singing in 200 years. Not because it was glorious, because it was correct. You are a Sawerin. The Westmark has not had one in 5 generations. If you walk into my country and I do not put my body and my pack between you and the men who would hunt you, then everything I have ever told my pups about why we are wolves is a lie. He paused. I would also do it for less noble reasons. I would prefer not to give those reasons today. They have not yet earned their right to be spoken aloud. She rose. Eorin Severalt. I am not going to give you an answer today. I did not expect one. My son needs a roof for tonight that is not the inn full of Corric Ironmoon's wolves. There is a guest cottage attached to my headwoman's smokehouse. I am asking you to sleep in it tonight, with your sword in the corner. I am not. Eorin, look at me. I am not offering you a place at my hearth. I am asking you to be a wall on the south side of my child, while his father's wolves are camped on the north side. Will you do that? His gaze did not move from her face. Lady, I will sleep on that wall every night you ask me to sleep on it. And on the night you do not ask me to anymore, I will go without a word. She nodded once. She walked out with her son on her shoulder. The black wolf was on the spur road again, watching from the trees. She did not look at him. She walked back to her hut with the sun on her face and her child against her heart. And for the first time in many months, she did not feel the unhealed mark on her shoulder burn. It only, very faintly, ached, like a wound that had finally remembered it was supposed to close. The first 3 nights with 2 alphas in Hollowmere were the strangest of Maven's life. Corric returned to her hut at dawn each morning. He did not press. He did not, on the second morning, complain when she told him she had asked the high alpha of the Westmark to sleep in the guest cottage, though she watched the muscle along his jaw work itself white. That is a wise placement, he had said finally. He is a better wall than any of mine. You are not jealous. Maven. His gaze had lifted to hers. I am eaten alive with it. I am holding my wolf back from going to that smokehouse with both hands, and the last of my reason. I am also the man who has no right to be jealous, because I am the man who left you in the bell tower. So I will not be jealous out loud. That is the courtesy I can offer. Eorin also kept his word. He did not approach the hut. He sat in the guest cottage from dusk to dawn, and during the day he made himself useful at the lake edge, mending nets, splitting wood for the widow Carrick. He did the work the way a man does work he has done since he was a boy. She watched him through the window while she fed her son. She did not let herself watch him for long. It was on the morning of the 4th day that the new horsemen came down out of the spurs. Hadron saw them first. He pushed open her door without knocking. "Riders, 20. Drakemore colors flying. They are not pretending." She set Ashriel into the carry sling and crossed to the door. She could see them now. A dark line moving down the spur road, banners snapping. The Drakemore worm picked out in silver thread. They have come openly because they are not afraid of being seen. Either Lady Isolde has the writ of the council in her saddlebag and intends to take you for crimes against the crown, or... He did not finish. She felt then something she had not felt before. Not fear. This was the cold, clear weatherfront feeling of a woman who has finally finished being afraid because she has decided to end it. Hadron, send to Corrick, send to Ioran. Have them meet in the headman's yard. Have them come unarmed. Unarmed, lady? You heard me. Unarmed, Hadron. He went. The two alphas came into the yard within a quarter hour. Corrick came first, with no sword at his hip and no knife at his belt. Ioran came second, on foot, hands open. They stopped at a careful distance from each other. Iron Moon. Sevralt. Corrick's voice was level. I did not expect to meet you in this courtesy. The lady asked it. Then we will keep it. Maven walked between them with her son against her chest. They are coming for him. If they reach this yard, one of two things will happen. Either you two will rip them apart, in which case we will have a war of 3 sides, or you will hand my son to them on the writ, and I will kill myself before I let them ride out with him. I am rejecting both. I am giving you a third. Corrick's gaze had gone wide. Maven. Hush. You will both stand in this yard when they arrive. You will both stand behind me. I will speak to Lady Isolde Drakemore not as a kennel loft healer, not as the king's discarded mistress, not as the false mate. I will speak to her as the Sauirin, because that is what the assassin who tried to kill my son confessed me to be before he died, and because that is what the songs of the Westmark have been singing for 2 moons. I am tired of letting men decide what name I am allowed to be called by. The name the moon gave me is older than the council. It is older than the Drakemore worm. It is older than the Iron Moon line. I am going to use it. She turned to Ioran. If your country has laws about who may speak that name, I am breaking them. Tell me now if I am breaking something I should not. His gaze on her did a slow, strange thing, not a softening, a settling, the way the sea settles after long wind. Lady, you do not have to earn the name the moon has given you. It has already been given. The laws of my country exist to make it possible for a Saren to use her name when she is ready. You are ready. Use it. She turned to Corrick. You will stand behind me. You will not speak. You will not draw breath toward Isolde unless I give you leave. Silently, Corrick. Promise me. I promise, he said, and his eyes were wet. The Drakemore riders rounded the last bend. They were not 20. They were closer to 30. At their head, on a tall white horse, rode Lady Isolde Drakemore. Beside her rode an old wolf in a dark hooded cloak with a long scroll case slung across his saddle. The council writ. So it was that then. Isolde did not dismount. She saw Corrick, and her face did not change. She saw Ioran, and her face did not change. She saw Maven standing in front of them both with the baby against her chest, and her face, for 1/2 second, did change. A flicker. Calculation. She rode forward at a walk. She stopped her horse 10 paces away. So, the kennel loft healer, with my husband's bastard. Maven did not answer. I have a writ. Sealed by 3 of the 6 houses. The child is to be brought before the council and his blood examined for legitimacy. Maven took 1 step forward. She let her shoulder do what it had been waiting to do. She let the Sauirin mark shine. It came up through her shift and dress and the wool of her cloak like moonlight through cloud, soft, cold as the moon at her highest in winter. The whole yard went silver pale, the horses shied. Lady Isolde's face went the color of milk. The cloaked wolf at her side dropped the scroll case and swung down off his horse and went down onto both knees in the gravel and put his forehead to the road. "Seirin, my Lady Isolde," the old wolf said into the gravel without lifting his head. "I am Speaker Marone of House Drakemore. Get off the horse. Get off and put your forehead to the ground beside mine. The council will not protect you for what you are about to do. The woman in front of us is a Seirin, and the writ in my saddlebag is not worth the parchment it is written on. Get off the horse." Isolde did not. Her face had gone past milk and into something pinched and white and cornered. She looked for one moment very young, and Maven understood with a cold pang that this woman had also been a piece on her father's board. "Lady Isolde, get off the horse and go home. Tell your father that the Drakemore worm has had its tail under the Seirin's foot for 1 full quarter of an hour, and the Seirin did not crush it because she does not want a war. Tell him that the next time he sends assassins to a fisher village, my foot will not lift again. Go home." For a long moment Isolde did not move. Then, slowly, she dismounted. She did not put her forehead to the ground. She would not, ever, for anyone. But she inclined her head, very slightly, the smallest possible bow that could be called one. "Seirin," she said. The word came out as though it were a fishbone. She mounted again. She looked at Corric. One long, complicated look, and rode back up the spur road at a walk. Maven turned. Yoran was smiling, just at the corners of his mouth. Corric had gone down on one knee in the gravel. "My queen! Corric, get up! I have no right to that word. I am only naming the thing I see. Get up. Call me Maven. You may earn the other word. You have not earned it yet." He got up. She walked between them out of the yard, and somewhere in the spurs a single high note rose, a horn or a wolf, and was answered, very faintly, from the south. The Westmark border had heard. The horn from the south was Ioran's 40. They came down out of the Westmark border pass on the morning of the 6th day. Their banners were the simple Westmark green and gray, with the small white crescent at the upper corner that meant under a Seirin's protection. He sent his first, a quiet, broad-faced woman named Brigga Stonefell, to set the perimeter. He himself walked back to her hut at midday. "Lady, the Drakemore riders did not return south." She set her son's spoon down. "Where did they go?" "East, toward the summer stronghold of House Drakemore, the Stonevale. 2 days at hard ride. Then her father is at the Stonevale. Now, waiting for her to bring back my son." "Yes." She set Ashriel into Ioran's arms. She did it without thinking. He took the child the way a man takes something entrusted to him by a court, with a great careful stillness. What kind of man is her father? The kind who does not lose. Then he will not stop. He will come down out of the Stonevale with every sword his house owns. He has nothing left to lose. He has only the regency the council will give him if he succeeds, because if Corric does not complete the bond by the next moon, he will not be a king anymore. Lord Drakemore will have his regency. He has perhaps 3 weeks. Yes. She stood with empty hands. I cannot stay in Hollowmere. No. He will burn this village to the foundation stones to flush me out. Yes, he said quietly. He will. And every fisher mother here will die before she tells him where you have gone. Halloran has already told me as much. She closed her eyes. She felt the weight of every hand that had ever fed her in this village, and she made the decision. We are not going to the Westmark. Lady, hear me. If we go, we are running. We will be running for the rest of my son's life. Drakemore will come for us across the border. Your 40 are good, but they are 40, and he has 600. I will not buy my son's life with the blood of a country whose only crime is that one of its alphas was kind enough to sit in a smokehouse with me. She opened her eyes. "We are going to the stone veil." He was very still. "Lady, hear me through. He is preparing for a war of armies. We are going to give him a war of 3 witnesses, me, Korik, and you. In his own hall. In front of his own people. Where Speaker Moran is standing. Where every old wolf of his hall who remembers the songs is standing. We are going to make him refuse, in his own hall, to put his forehead to a Saren's foot. And when he refuses, because he will refuse, his own house will set him down. Not us. Them." A long silence. "Lady, that is the most reckless plan I have ever heard a wolf offer." "Yes. It will probably get all 3 of us killed. Probably. It is also the only plan that does not buy your son's life with someone else's. So we will do it." He handed her back her baby. He went to gather the 40. Korik came at dusk. She told him in the doorway. She watched his face. She had expected him to refuse. She had expected him to demand his 1,000 wolves. She had expected the cowardice that had cost her everything in the cathedral to come up out of him again. He did none of those things. "Yes, we go. The 3 of us. Witnesses. Nothing more. I will leave my 100 at Brindle Crossing under Hadrian. They will not cross unless I send word. If I do not send word, if I die in his hall, Hadrian has standing instructions. He will not march. There will be no war from my side. The line will end with me. The council will choose the next king. I have made my peace with that already. I made it the morning I woke in the marriage bed." Korik. "Yes. You are letting me walk into Lord Drakemore's hall with my son. I am walking with you. I am not letting you do anything, because that is no longer a word that exists between us. I have spent these moons earning back the right to stand at your shoulder, and I have not earned it. I am only saying that if I have one thing left to give you, it is no army, it is just me. Standing where he can be killed by anyone in that hall with a faster blade. That is what I should have done in the cathedral. I am offering it now. It is too late, and I know it is too late, and I am offering it anyway." The wound in her shoulder went, for one long moment, completely still. It was, she realized with a small soft shock, beginning finally to close. She did not tell him. "At first light, we ride at first light." He bowed and went out into the dusk. She kissed the warm crown of her son's head. "Brave one, we are going to a hall full of swords, and you are going to sleep through it, I promise." The mark on her shoulder, very faintly, hummed. Like a horn. Very far away. Answering. The stone veil was older than the Iron Moon Citadel. Carved, the song said, into the granite shoulder of the veilstone, the great solitary peak that rose out of the high step like a fist closed around something it would not let anyone see. The hall itself was inside the mountain. Its great doors were 30 feet of black ironwood banded in beaten copper. She rode across the long stone causeway on a small gray mare between the 2 alphas, Korik on her right, Yoran on her left. Both had left every weapon at the foot of the causeway. Behind them rode Hadran Vase and Briga Stonefell. 4 witnesses, and 1 Saren, with a baby in a sling against her chest. The great doors opened with the well-oiled silence of doors that had been opened a great many times in the last 2 days, for a great many men. Lord Drakemore had been gathering. By the look of the courtyard, 600 swords was a low estimate. She did not slow her horse. She did not look at the swords. She rode straight into the throat of the mountain hall. The throat opened into a room the size of a cathedral, lit by braziers of slow-burning resin that threw a low red light across the granite. At the far end, on a raised stone seat carved from the living rock, sat Lord Othran Drakemore. He was past 60, white-haired, lean as a winter heron. Isolde sat at his right on a smaller seat, her face composed but very pale. At his left stood Speaker Marin, the old wolf who had knelt in the gravel of Hollowmere. Around the walls of the hall, the witnesses. This was the part Lord Othrin could not control. The stone vale was the seat of every old vassal house bonded to Drakemore. Small lordlings, speakers, elder women, bonded healers, lore masters. They had all come for the war call. They were standing 6 deep along the granite walls. Lord Othrin rose. The Kennel Loft healer, the Alpha King of the Reaches, the High Alpha of the Westmark. All 3 of you in my hall, with no swords and no army and 1 infant. I confess I did not expect this. I had been preparing a much larger entertainment. Lord Drakemore, Maven said. She did not raise her voice. The silence opened around her words and carried them. I have not come into your hall under your daughter's writ. I have not come under the council's seal. I have not come under King Coric's banner or under High Alpha Eorin's. I have come under my own. She slid down from her horse and walked across the granite with her son against her chest. She stopped 20 paces from the foot of the stone seat. She did not kneel. She let her shoulder do, in front of every witness on every wall, what it had been waiting to do. The silver light came up. It rose into the red-lit hall like moonlight rising into a smoky room. The slow-burning resin of the braziers along the walls went, one after the other, pale. The whole inside of the mountain shifted from red to a cold, clean white, like a snowfield in moonlight. Speaker Moran, beside the throne, dropped to 1 knee, then both. Then his forehead to the stone. He did not say the word. The wolves along the walls said it for him. It came out in a long breath, 1,000 voices breathing it together. Sauron. Lord Othrin did not move. He stood at his stone seat with the silver light on his white hair, and Maven watched the moment he understood what was happening to him in his own hall. Lord Othrin, bow. A long moment. I will not. The wolves along the walls inhaled together. Father. Iseult was on her feet. Bow. I will not. He did not look at her. I will not bow to a Kennel Loft healer because she has a glow under her shift and a song in the Westmark. Meryn, rise. Meryn did not rise. He spoke from the floor without lifting his head. Othrin. He used the Lord's first name in the stone veil for the first and last time of his service. You will bow, or I will release my bond, and every speaker of every house bonded to yours will release theirs by the end of this hour. I gave you 40 years, and I would have given you the rest. Bow. Lord Othrin stood for 1 long moment. Then he reached, in a single fast, clean movement, into the folds of his white cloak, and he came out with a small black knife, the same blade the Hollow Order carried. And he threw it. He did not throw it at Maven, he threw it at the baby. A great many things happened in the next half-second. Coric moved. He did not shift. He had no blade. He simply moved. The way only an alpha at the edge of feral can move, and he was in front of her between one heartbeat and the next, and the black knife went into the meat of his chest just below the collarbone and stayed there. Yoran moved too. He crossed the granite at a long sprint, hit Lord Uthrin at the foot of the stone seat, and pinned him with 1 knee on his throat. He did not kill him. He looked over his shoulder at her. I will not finish this without your word. And he waited. Maven caught Coric as his knees gave. He went down with the knife still in him. The wolfsbane was already on his tongue, the bitter green smell that meant he had perhaps a quarter hour to live, perhaps less. His gaze lifted to her face. His hand came up to close around her wrist. Maven. Hush. Be quiet. He is safe? He is safe. Coric, he is safe. You stupid. Be quiet. Let me work. She laid Ashriel down on the granite. He did not cry. He looked up at the hall with his father's exact eyes, and he watched. She put her hands on Coric's chest. She pulled the knife out the way Halloran had taught her to pull a fishhook from a child's palm, in 1 long, clean motion. The wolfsbane had already spread. She had perhaps 2 minutes. Less. She did not have 2 minutes. She did not think. She put her hands on him and let the Sauron come up through her. Not gentle, not silver, but the deeper old thing under the silver. The light came up, and it was not pale anymore. It was white. White like the inside of a star. It went into him, and it found the wolf's bane, and it burned it, slowly, from inside the meat of him outward. And Korik arched off the stone with a sound that should have killed him a second time. He did not die. She worked in the cold, white silence of the hall, with every wolf in the stone vale watching, until the black coldness was gone from his blood, until the wound closed under her palms, leaving a long, pale scar in the shape of a crescent, until the yellow in his eyes, which had been the wolf eating the man, broke and went back, ring by ring, to the river-stone gray she had loved in an orchard. He looked up at her with the right gaze, for the first time in many moons. Moon heart. She put her brow to his. Somewhere very far above them, the great horn of the stone veil, which had not been blown in 3 generations, began slowly to sound. The witnesses were calling the Soiran's judgment. She rose. She turned to Ioran. "Let him up. Lady, let him up. He is going to walk to his daughter, and he is going to put his forehead to the stone in front of his hall, and he is going to live. He is going to live in the stone vale under his daughter's regency, because his daughter is going to inherit his seat at the end of this hour. That is the Soiran's judgment. There will be no execution. There will be no war." Ioran let him up. Lord Othran walked, very slowly, to his daughter's stone seat. He looked at her, and Maven saw in his face that he had gone in the last quarter hour from a man who could not bow to a man who had nothing left to bow with. And then he did the hardest thing she had ever watched a wolf do. He put his forehead to the stone of his own hall, and he stayed there. Iso put her hand on her father's white head. She was crying, the slow, steady tears of a woman who has been the piece on a board her whole life and has just become the player. "Soiran. Lady Isolde. Thank you. Hold the seat. I will." It was done. She picked up her son. She walked out of the Stonevale Hall in the cold white light of her own shoulder, with the 2 alphas walking 3 paces behind her on either side, and the bondspeople of every Drakemore vassal hall along the walls bowed as she passed, and the great horn sounded long and slow above her until she was out the great doors and across the causeway, and into the winter sun on the far side, where the spring was beginning to come down off the spurs at last. The choosing came 1 moon later on the porch of a small house on the southern ridge of Hollowmere. She had told both alphas, on the morning after the Stonevale, that she was returning to the village she had given birth in for 1 moon, alone, with her son. At the end of it, she would tell them what she had decided, and the one she did not name would leave by the spur road and not look back. Korik had ridden back to set his house in order. He had formally annulled his marriage before the council, with Isolde herself testifying that the union had never been consummated. He had made Hadran Weiss his hand of the king. Ioran had ridden back to his own hall and told his 40 and his elders that he had ridden 11 days for a moon-marked woman in a song, and that if she did not choose him, he would still spend the rest of his life holding the crescent open over her wherever she went. One old woman, Ioran's own grandmother, had risen and pressed her palm to his cheek and said, in a voice every wolf could hear, "Son of my son, you have finally said the thing I have been waiting your whole life to hear you say." The moon turned. On the morning of the chosen day, she came out onto the porch. The lake was still gray. Ashriel was wrapped against her chest. The 2 alphas were already at the foot of the porch. They had ridden in separately at first light and walked the last 100 paces on foot, and they had stopped at her steps and not spoken. They had only stood. The way the song said, Korik, thinner than he had been in the cathedral. The yellow gone from his gaze for a moon. The crescent scar visible at the open throat of his coat. Wearing no crown. He was looking up at her with the river-stone eyes of the man who had pressed his forehead to the rise of her belly in an orchard, and he was... She saw it in the faint tremor of his hands. Afraid. Ioran, standing easy, the pale hair tied back, the bone-handled apple knife at his belt, He was at peace. He was here today to honor her choice and not to sway it. She made the only choice a Sauron could make. She made the choice that would be sung in halls she had never seen for 200 years. She came down the porch steps. She walked between the two alphas. She did not stop in front of either. She walked past them both, into the gravel path, with her son against her chest. She turned, halfway down the path, and looked back. Neither of you. Not yet. A very long silence. I am not choosing today. I am choosing me. I have been a piece on a man's board since I was 15 years old. First a kennel master's daughter, then a king's secret, then a Sauron in 2 countries' songs. I have not yet, in any of those lives, been a woman who walked her own road for a year before she walked another's. I am going to walk it now. I am going to walk to the Westmark first, because the Westmark has laws to protect a Sauron who is choosing, and the Reaches do not yet. I am going to ask the High Alpha of the Westmark to give me a small house on the edge of his country, where I may live for 1 year as a healer in a village, not as a Sauron, as a healer, with my son, by myself. Iran closed his eyes. A small thing. A breath. Corric Iron Moon. You will hold the throne. You will not name a Luna. You will rule the Reaches alone for 1 year. You will not visit me. You will not write to me. At the end of the year, I will come to the Iron Moon Citadel myself, with my son, and I will tell you what I have decided. If I decide otherwise, you will accept it, and you will not. Corric, look at me. You will not let yourself die of it. The bond will not take you, because I have not refused you, only deferred you. You will live. Do you accept it? Corric was crying without sound. He did not wipe his eyes. I accept it. Eorin Sevralt, you will give me the small house. You will not visit it. You will hold the crescent open over the road I walk in for 1 year, and you will not stand on the road with me. At the end of the year, I will come to your hall with my son, and I will tell you what I have decided. Do you accept it? He opened his eyes. They were wet. I accept it. Then it is done. She walked the rest of the way down the path. She did not look back. The 2 alphas stood for a long time without speaking, and then, eventually, they bowed to each other. Once, each, and walked their separate ways back to their separate horses, and rode out of Hollowmere by separate roads. Halloran came up the path afterward, stick clicking. You little wolf, that is not in the song. No, it is not. They are going to write a new song. They are going to call it The Sauron Who Chose Herself. They can call it what they like. Halloran, will you come to the Westmark with us? I cannot do a year of it alone. The old woman looked up at her. Healer, I had my bag packed last night. The year passed. She lived in a small white stone house on the northern road of the Westmark, 3 days' ride from Iran's Hall, in a village called Penmoss where no one had heard her old name. She delivered babies. She set bones. Halloran kept her kitchen and minded her son. Ashriel grew. He learned to walk in the courtyard. He learned to say moon before he learned to say mother. His eyes settled, by his first birthday, into a slow, steady gold. Corric kept his word. He ruled the Reaches alone. The speakers said the bond did not take him because the Sauron had not refused him. She had only made him wait. He waited well. He rebuilt the council. He brought Isolde Drakemore onto it as Lady of the Stonevale. He pardoned the surviving Hollow Order assassins on the condition that they serve the rest of their lives in the hospitals of the Reaches as orderlies. He stopped sleeping in his throne room. He slept eventually in a bed. Huran kept his too. He held the crescent open over the northern road of the Westmark. He did not ride to Penmoss once. He did, twice, send anonymous gifts. A wooden hobby horse for Ashriel's first birthday that she recognized the apple knife marks on. And at midwinter, a basket of southern oranges, which were a thing she had told him in a smokehouse that her grandmother had loved. She did not write to thank him. He had not signed the gifts. At the end of the year, on the first morning of the new spring, she came out onto the road with her son's hand in her own. Halloran stood in the doorway with a small bundle of food. "Which way, healer?" She looked north. She looked south. "South, mother?" Halloran nodded. "I knew it last winter when you cried over the oranges." "I did not cry over the oranges." "You cried over the oranges, healer." "I was there. The Westmark Hall is 3 days' ride. He will be in his courtyard at dusk on the third day, because he has been there at dusk every day for a year, in case. Go and put him out of his patience." She rode south. The Sauron mark on her shoulder finally, after a year, completely closed. A small soft silver scar in the shape of a crescent. Yoran Sevralt was in his courtyard at dusk on the third day. He was peeling an apple with a small bone-handled knife. The peel was coming off in a single curl. He looked up when her horse came under the gate. He set the apple down very carefully on the bench beside him. He stood. He did not move from the bench because he had promised himself, sometime in the winter, that he would not cross the courtyard for her. That she would, if she came, cross it for him. She crossed it for him. She got down off the mare. She set Ashriel on his small, steady feet, and the boy ran ahead of her, straight to Ioran, with the unself-conscious instinct of a pup who has decided a thing, and grabbed 2 handfuls of his coat, and looked up at him with the warm gold eyes and said, very seriously, "Moon." Yoran put one big, careful hand on the back of the boy's head. He did not look at the boy. He looked over the boy's head, at her, and the winter sea gaze was unguarded for the first time since the smokehouse. "Lady." "Yoran, you came south. I came south." "Korik." "I have written to Korik. He has answered. He has said he loves me, and that he is glad I am alive, and that he will hold the Reaches in honor for the rest of his natural life, and that if I ever need him, he will come without being asked. He has asked me, in return, only one thing: that our son grow up knowing both his fathers. He is the man I almost loved. He is going to be a very good king. He is going to be Ashriel's father in the Reaches, and you are going to be Ashriel's father in the Westmark, and the 2 of you are going to sit at the same table at the boy's coming of age, 25 years from now, because I am going to make you. That is the only arrangement I will accept. Will you have it?" He looked at her over the warm gold head of her son. He smiled, the smokehouse smile. "Lady, I will have any arrangement that begins with you crossing my courtyard. You said you would not be the one to cross it." "I lied. I would have crossed it tomorrow. I had 3 days left in me." "Yoran." "Yes. Come and meet my son properly." He came down off the bench. He went down onto one knee in the courtyard gravel in front of the boy, very slowly, the way a large, careful man kneels in front of a small, fierce one. Ashriel let go of his coat. Ashriel reached up and put a small palm on Ioran's stubbled cheek, the same way he had done a year ago on his other father's cheek, because that was the gesture his small wolf self had decided meant, "I am acquainting myself with the people who are mine." Ioran did not, this time, fall. He only closed his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, he said, very softly, "Hello, brave one." Ashriel laughed. She stood in the courtyard of the Westmark Hall in the spring dusk with her son's small laugh going up into the air, and the winter sea gaze finally, after a year, rising from her child's face to her own, and she understood all at once that this was the part of the song the singer had not put in. The singer had ended at the choosing because the singer had not believed her listeners would forgive the truth, which was this: the Sauron's choice is not a man. The Sauron's choice is a life. And once she has chosen the life, the man who is allowed into it is the one who built a courtyard she would walk across on her own feet, and waited in it through a winter without asking, and stood up off the bench when she arrived. She crossed the last few steps of the gravel. She put her hand on Ioran's shoulder while he knelt in front of her son. "Stand up, High Alpha." He stood up. She did not kiss him. Not yet. There would be time. There would be a coronation, eventually, in which she would be named Sairene of the Two Reaches. There would be more children. There would be a moon. 25 years from now, when Ashriel would stand in the obsidian cathedral in the silver mantle of the Iron Moon line, and he would name his own Luna in front of 3,000 wolves. And he would name her in daylight, in front of the world, because his mother's son had been raised to know that a king who hides the woman he loves is no king at all. But that was all later. For now, in the courtyard, in the spring dusk, she put her brow to Eorin Severalt's shoulder, and her son wrapped his small arms around both of their knees and laughed up at them, and the great horn of the Westmark Hall, sounded only when a siren came home, began slowly to sound. It was answered very faintly from the reaches, from the throne room of the Iron Moon Citadel, where a thin king with riverstone eyes had been waiting at his window for a year. He heard it. He bowed his head over his hands. He smiled. The wolves of two countries lifted their voices in the answer. And in the small white stone house on the northern road of the Westmark, on the windowsill of an empty kitchen, a single basket of southern oranges sat in the last of the sun and waited to be carried south to the courtyard where they had always, in the end, been going.